are the ones who run the company, right? So the managers, the CAM and the assistant CAM, should be the ones who bring to the board, this is what should be brought to your attention. Now the board can obviously, they're here, members are here, they're gonna see stuff maybe before the CAM made it to that, things that are outstanding, deferred, right, if you said this. And then they're gonna bring it to the CAM and say, hey, we'd like to move this to the forefront. But the CAM's gonna go on, their processes to get it done, because everything's not gonna be month one,
Right.
So yes, in unison, the CAM should be the lead on everything, but the board should be the ones that decide what needs to be done and what can be deferred. But the manager, if they're not bringing this up to your attention, we're not assuming you guys have been trained for this. I mean, you should be certified as a board member, but we're not assuming you've gone through any specific training to be a CAM. You haven't worked in construction. So the board shouldn't be the authority on that. The CAM should be. And if the CAM hasn't been doing it, they're doing a disservice to the management agreement, because part of that is care for the value, the condition, and the future use of the association. So all those three fall into maintenance, and not being on maintenance plan is kind of derelict to your duty.
Right. And I know we have this question before on other our presentations, is board training is different. Webinar board training to get certified is a lot different than being on a board, coming into a board, and not kind of being trained as to what that board has done, what they're doing, and how to be on that board. So there's it's a whole different answer.
For sure. The certification is just so you don't do stuff that's illegal.
Right.
Blatantly illegal, or so you know what terms are and what's
right.
kind of your role and how you fit into it. The reason that almost every association staggers their board members is so that the history does not die with the new board coming on. So if the treasurer stays and the president, whoever, they're usually 1-2 year staggered terms, or one goes off this year, another one goes off that year, and whatnot, so that you can keep the history. Because if you switch management companies, if you switch CAMs, the board is going to be the one who can kind of keep that gelled together and say, hey, this is a little gray area that I noticed is developing through this turnover with management companies, or since we've gone boards and now we're focusing on this, the old board used to be focused on this. Let's bring some of that back. So yes, the board has to be involved, but they should not be the adult in the room, so to speak, because they're not trained or licensed for it.
And with that being said, as far as transitions go, how difficult is it to transition from one management company to another? Is it that huge of a change that, from a resident standpoint?
Oh, no. For residents, no. There's nothing to do besides you fill out a form saying, I used to pay this account, now I'm paying this management account out of my bank account. It's literally one form and you're done. Everything else comes to you through the portal and through mailings. So there's really nothing for a resident. Half the residents don't even know who the management company changes in unless they're coming to the meetings, until they get their new notice of who to pay. So that's really the only thing a resident would have to do, is fill out one new form. Okay? So one new form to say, this is my information, updated, my email address, my address, my payment information. That's all they have to do. The transition, though, is a big deal for the management company, because we work with the old management company to get ledgers, bank accounts, everything opened and done, so that we can have your community shoppable. Where if someone sold their home, we can do it stoppable. Let them know if they are past due on dues, if they have outstanding violations that need to be cured, whatever. So, yes, the transition is a big deal, but it's not a big deal for anyone who lives in the community. It's only a big deal for the management company who's taking on a new community to make sure they have everything. So if you look on this page, right before the pricing is our transition process.
You have a page number on that?
Number 12.
Okay.
So there's a ton of stuff to do. So yeah, it's kind of complicated. That's why we won't say, hey, can you come on next week?
That's the timeline.
Yeah. So you say, hey, you want to come on next week? We're like, well, not really. We wouldn't be able to have everything done by then. So we like to do 30 to 45 days would be ideal. 30 days is no problem. 45 days is ideal. And that way it gives us a chance if the old management company doesn't give us all the documents, or the board members don't sign their cards for the bank, or whatever. We have plenty of time and we don't feel against the clock. So transition is very involved, but not for really anyone but the transition team of each management company.
Yeah, speaking of that
Sure.
as well, how can our residents pay their monthly fees? I mean, I know that there's auto debit. They can mail a check the old-fashioned way.
Yep.
So can they pay by credit card?
Yeah, there's a charge because third party, they have to pay the interest on the credit
well,
card.
they're paying the credit card company, not
Yeah.
you or
No,
not Sawgrass.
the third party charges will charge you whatever, $2.95 or whatever to process it and pay the credit card swipe fee and anything like that. But you can pay with us through either check to the direct deposit, which is that's ACH, and then there's no cost to anyone. And you can do it through the portal, to the lockbox, anything but drop off a check at the office. That's just us because then we have to mail it to the lockbox. So checks, debits, credits, pretty much any way you can pay anywhere.
Where it's automatically dropped in your account.
Yeah, that's what we prefer, and that's why we say it's just one form. You sign up, sign off, say yes, you can take this amount for my, and then it's all taken care of, and you never get a late fee.
What about, okay, so for me, I always pay 60 days ahead.
Sure, prepaid.
Because I never know where I'm going to be, and then that gives me,
That's a grace period, right?
right, to not fall behind for any reason, so to speak.
Yeah, we take prepaids.
So that money, of course, is like held in an escrow when we moved over. It's on my ledger, and it's kind of just sitting out there, and it will transfer over to the new management company. Because I know in the past from other communities that I've lived in, when we switch management companies, there's always that hiccup.
Sure.
You
And it's
know?
usually the previous management company causing the hiccup.
I don't know who causes
Yeah.
it. It really doesn't matter. I don't want to point the finger.
Sure.
I just know that there's always that hiccup. So the way that I prevented myself from being involved in that hiccup ever again is to make sure that I'm always 2 months ahead.
Yeah.
Because eventually it's going to catch up.
Sure. And as long as, and see, this is the way I say a hiccup could be previous management company solved. If they don't have an accurate ledger that they give to us saying that you've paid the 60 days in advance, or don't give us the funds, now you get a letter from the HOA saying, hey, you haven't paid your dues. And I paid them. Who'd you pay? So that's really the only thing that could ever happen is that the previous management company suddenly has selective memory loss or just gets derelict in their duties.
Right.
But we
I
are,
mean, it does eventually catch up.
No,
Sure.
That's a great point, Denise, because as you've probably seen when you were on the board, there are quite a number of people who prepay. Yeah.
I'll be good.
We're
Like I
very
said, I
fortunate
travel
that
a
way.
lot, so at any point in time, anything can happen. And my children have to pick it up. They at least have a little bit of breathing room to figure out what I've done
right. No, and
before they pick it up.
Yeah.
and
Well,
again,
that and the fact that we would also be aware, that we already are anyway, because we just got the financials last night. But yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I said, there's always that hiccup, and I'm like, whose side it's on. It doesn't really matter whose side it's on. It always
It's an
ends up
issue,
being the homeowner that gets the notice.
which again, before Leland or whoever would just, pass it through and go like this to you, it should be passed through the board to say, no, we shouldn't be having all of these are usually prepaid people, what the heck is going on?
Right.
So
Yeah.
we need to have that buffer in between to make sure that people are not getting upset over somebody else's mistake.
yeah, usually when we do the transition, we ask for your last financials, so now we know what the board knows. Like, here's all your prepaids, here's all your delinquents. Now we know if this doesn't match up, we have something wrong. We ask for your roster, then we get the management company roster, we're like, they have 4 more people than you do. Something's wrong here. So we always try to take what the board has, because you guys should have the most up-to-date information from the management company. And then when we go to the management company, because sometimes they slow roll, they're angry, they lost the account, whatever, then they'll give us their stuff, and then we compare the two. We go to the public records to make sure it matches the property appraiser, and then we create the shell for each account.
You're ready for another question?
I'm always ready.
What do you think about finding committees?
They're definitely needed in some communities, because if you didn't have them, you'd have the attorney for everything. But like for small stuff like garbage cans, not cutting your grass, we guys don't have that issue. But like little stuff that you're not going to send somebody to the attorney for leaving their garbage cans out, right? But that $10 fine every time starts to really annoy them when they start doing it. So I like fining for that. I don't believe that crushing homeowners into compliance is the way to go. Some people, like, you guys don't have these issues because you're multifamily, but sometimes, like, it's a stucco issue on a single-family home. Well, he knows it's going to be $3,500 to fix it. He doesn't just have $3,500 lying around. And then the board's crushing him with fines, $100 a day or whatever, getting crazy. Are you really doing anything for compliance? Yeah, are you doing anything for compliance? No, you're just creating a hornet's nest of angry people out there who now have financial obligations that are even worse, and they're neighbors of yours in your community. So I do like fining committees for small stuff to keep compliance, not to put your thumb on people and crush them.
Because as of right now, we don't have a fining committee, so there's really, when somebody has a violation, it's not, there's nothing for them to lose.
Sure.
To eventually comply, yeah. But we do,
It's such a delicate balance. How do you have a fining committee and not be threatened?
And not be what?
Threatened. Because being threatened.
Oh, threatened, yeah.
because way back when I first moved in here, everything was beautiful and the porches were going downhill. Okay, so I would walk through and I would take pictures of the porches in the non-garage units because that's where the problem was.
Sure.
How do you do that without getting threatening letters or somebody knocking on your door or being nasty to you? There's that fine line because not everybody is nice.
Sure, no. Some people aren't even
not
normal.
all of us have, somebody else living in our homes with us.
Sure.
So there's that safety, and I don't have a dog, I don't have a gun,
Right.
it's just me.
What's your address then?
It's just me, which everybody here knows.
But she has a very vicious cat.
So I'm not worried about. Yeah, I have 2 cats.
Well, imagine.
I don't know how fast the one's gonna move. He's 22 pounds. But anyways, how do you get that down to balance? Because we had somebody here, and she was great with the pool, and people would get in her face. I mean, it was scary. They threatened to burn down her house.
Right.
And I know there's.
Was she a cam or a member?
No, she's a member. There are board members here who have taken initiative, and they've also been threatened.
Sure.
And that's not a good thing.
Yeah. So 2 things we have. One is if anyone threatens anyone on the board or another member, the attorney's sending them a letter immediately. And they're going to find out real quickly that they're both under observation, and the next one's going to be very expensive for them because they're going to be taken to small claims court. And they're going to be sued, and they're probably going to be turned over to the police, and then they're going to have cops at their house and have to do that whole embarrassment. So we don't really tolerate any types of threats. So if that happens with anyone in our membership, it's usually going to be snuffed out pretty quick as long as someone lets us know. In regards to the delicate balance, it is a delicate balance. It's with anything. Pulling people over for speeding, like, man, I don't want to crush them with a $250 fine, but can't everyone speeding? This is a school zone, whatever. It requires your CAM and your board to know your members. Yeah, that's why we want an engaged membership. We know who everybody is. We know their situation. We know that habitual people who do the same thing. It's not like we start over again. The attorneys we work with use that first one that happened 4 months ago as the first one, and now this is the second offense. So even though they temporarily cured it, it's still their second strike before their third. So in the end, they're going to be dealing with the attorney if there's not compliance. Sometimes we have committees like the pool committee or the landscaping committee, and they become the one who takes the brunt of anger. Right. We try to make sure that everybody knows when we do meet and greets and everything like that if there's any issues with the way the association's been run, bring it to your CAM, and the CAM will bring it to the board. Bring it to your CAM, the CAM will see if it's already illegal or against your documents. Then we'll bring it to the board. We try to avoid members going to the board. The board is the executive directors. You don't have people who have Verizon accounts calling the CEO about complaints about their bill pay. It's the same mentality you have to have. It's hard to get good association volunteers who care, do their duty, everything. The minute someone gets threatened, they're probably not going to care as much, or they're going to be like, you know what, this isn't worth my time, I'm out of here. And then you're going to have dilapidation that it happens from lack of leadership. So we try to be the buffer in between the members and the board. And when we see that it's not being, respected, then we'll usually have the lawyer step in and at least calm people down so they realize, like, this cannot continue. But certain people are just unstable. I mean, there's going to be...
I would agree.
You go on Facebook and you think you wronged them personally for writing them a garbage can violation,
I would agree.
And some of that as HOAs. That's why CAMs last 18 months on average, It's a tough job.
I just, I don't think anybody deserves to be threatened.
No, and again, once we're notified...
And Denise has been terrific eyes and ears because a lot of us live in the garage units and she lives with a non-garage unit, so you can write a book on what you've experienced back there.
And we allow members to send us violations, so this isn't like...
No, and we do that now. We do that
and it's
now.
completely anonymous,
It's a very delicate balance because, I stopped getting involved with the dumpster because somebody followed me all the way around the neighborhood. I was in 3-inch heels and I'm walking and he's following me in his truck.
Right.
Trying to figure out where I live. Yeah, this was several years ago. Yeah, he tried to figure out where I live. I walked all the way over to the mail kiosk and hung out back here until he gave up on me.
Right.
And I didn't have my fob either, so I had to walk all the way back to my house in my work clothes. But I stopped getting involved because,
Right.
I live right there. He could have seen me go into my house.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, and that's why I'm saying it's such a delicate balance. You want to take care of your community, and I don't even know I don't think this person even lived here.
I've seen that. People
Was that
come
somebody
in
you think
and
was
then
just
they
dumping them?
go
Yeah,
out.
yeah, we have that.
Yeah, that's the other problem,
We have
having a
that-
compactor.
Do we have
Dumpster
cameras?
is a delicate balance.
Yeah, I've heard that stuff.
We used to have, but not right now.
No camera?
Yeah,
We have it on order, right?
Yeah, I think we're supposed to be getting 2 ring cameras for back there, but we don't have a hotspot back there. And Spectrum is installing a hotspot back there, but they're 45 to 60 days out.
And I don't even know that that's gonna solve all the problems,
No,
but my
nothing's a silver bullet.
point, back to the original point was, people, board members, being correct. For trying to better the community,
Sure.
and all of us have experienced it on some level that are here right now.
Yeah, no, and
Well,
again,
I do the neighborhood watch here in the circle because we have cars here parking weeks at a time. We changed the sign saying visitor parking 24-hour limit, and yet you still have people doing it. So I just made up on fluorescent paper a very nice, here's what the rule is, 24-hour limit, here's what you can do. And I actually got one person who took their note and threw it onto my porch. So now they know where I live, and they were ticked off, and I thought, and here I've got 2 other people in my house that I could keep protected too. Is it worth it for an unpaid voluntary,
Right.
just trying to be a good neighbor? Yeah.
Right, and that's my concern.
yeah, and that's a concern everywhere. I mean, you live in a condo building where everyone can easily be,
You hang out at the pool on
Yeah.
a weekend and you'll hear the grumbling.
I know.
There's always gonna be somebody that's going to complain. You're never gonna get away from that.
Sure.
Regardless of how good of a job you do, or how bad of a job you do, there's gonna be complaints. That's one thing. But threats are another thing.
Sure. Yeah, like, again, as long as people let us know, we'll use the association attorney to send them a censure order. We're basically say, hey, it's completely out of stuff, or just send the police right to their house and they can deal with that, having a police report on this. Because if it happens a second time, those same police are usually the ones who show up and remember.
They can't use their energy to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Right, and that's something we try to promote. I mean, it's never going to work, but we try to promote that with as many people as possible. Once you have your account set up on Town Square and you see pictures of your neighbors, like, oh, hey, that's her name. Oh, she's on the treadmill. Like, whatever. Just the minute you start to feel where you are in the community and who your community members are, and the world becomes smaller, so to speak, we usually get better compliance and better people. But there's always those unstable people who live in every community. A certain percent, we say 6%. Same people who cause the problems are the same people who complain that the board's not doing anything. So there's going to certainly
Or you can even run into neighbors who might need some help.
yeah, but there's always going to be a certain amount of crazy people. We try to defend you.
Like I said, it's
Yeah.
how do you, in your experience, it's such a delicate balance. How do you balance? You want to fine, you want to do this,
Yeah.
and I get that. I believe that yes, there needs to be fines. I understand that, but again, it's that delicate balance.
Yeah, and
Where's the line?
Yeah, and it's always a moving target, right? So one community, and you can run it like a dictator and just force people into compliance. Other communities, it's all kids, gloves, and carrots, right? So, hey, please do this. This is why they do it. Other communities are like, oh, I don't want to do it. And we don't want where people feel like renters, right? You get a really tough
No,
HOA.
you lose property value.
Yeah, and everyone just feels like if the HOA is a dictatorship, so to speak, where they're always forcing rules that the membership doesn't feel are agreeable, then you'll have like an us and them, kind of a renters versus landlord mentality. We try to do the opposite. We try to engage people, tell them why we're doing it. We learned in our trainings that you do 3 things, you usually get better compliance. Tell them what, so what, and now what. What's the issue, why it's an issue, and what we're going to do to correct it. If they get those all 3 together, it's rational people can put that together. Unrational people, there's no cure for it. But usually most normal people will see, all right, what's the problem? Why is it a problem? And what are we going to do to fix it? And those 3 usually seem that's a pretty good flow here. So we just try to do that. We don't try to crush people again with fines or overbearing where they've been doing it for 2 years and all of a sudden they're getting violation after violation for something they didn't even know was being enforced. We notify them something that may have been fallen by the wayside, give them 15, 30 days before, sometimes it's hoses need to be put away or your screens need to be repaired, whatever it is. Give people a chance to comply because they'd much rather do it voluntarily than be forced with a notice. Because now it's like, man, I'm not doing anything. So we just try to feed into the human mentality of if you don't feel like an enemy, they don't treat you like an enemy,
I've had experiences with owners who are landlords. how much does Associa get involved with that? What do they
Well, we
stay
can't,
on?
remember, we only deal with homeowners, so renters can't even call our office to get information. We only deal with homeowners, so the renter would have to go to the homeowner. If the homeowner wants to sign them up as the contact, that's fine. But we only deal with homeowners, so that if there was a violation by a renter, the homeowner gets the violation, and it's up to them to enforce their lease. If it becomes an issue where the board says, hey, we need to send this particular landlord to the attorney, then the attorney will find out where in the statute or where in the documents they're going awry and use that against them. But again, we try to stay out of that unless there's documents that say we get to review applications before renters come in, we get to review leases for kicking. Because sometimes they'll do like, oh, it's a full 1-year lease, but they can leave it any time with like a $50 out. So they're basically renting a season, you know? So if the board has the discretion to do that in their documents, we can review leases to make sure they're a 1-year lease without easy out clauses, do background checks on the tenants, charge the owner who's renting it the $100 to do the background
Right,
check.
well, I was gonna say, I think most of them do it themselves, don't they? Because I know at least the current ones that we have been using a realtor, and the realtor generally produces the background checks, correct?
Yeah, each landlord has been doing their own background check.
But how do you know those were done properly?
We don't.
So that if the
I was
HOA,
gonna say, then we also
Yeah, we
had,
had the sex trafficker in my building.
I will say this, they provide the copies of,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, anything can be doctored, but I don't want to make it seem as though they're not providing any information or information that they are providing as is written.
yeah, and if you guys want to keep
It's
using that,
hard
that's fine.
copies of everything,
There is, yeah.
but there is a fine line
But we actually
between,
found
a
one
lot of the
page
times, and I would
that they did
imagine
not.
whoever is reviewing leases now is going through the same thing I did before. The owner will be completely good with something. I would get something in my lap and review it, and I kind of go back and I'm going, why was this sent? Is this not an issue to you as an owner?
Yeah.
And then I kind of had to several times work with the cans with regards to reaching out to the owner and say, well, did you get the okay from the owner that everything is good? So a lot of the time, like agreements were sent, everything seemed good, but you flip a couple pages and you see a couple things and you kind of go, you know, let's say everybody deserves a second chance in life, but if something is within the last few months, you kind of go, is the owner aware of this?
Right.
Is he completely signed off on
Well, there's two things. One, it has to be cut and dry who's allowed and who's not, because otherwise you get into discrimination and targeting and all this other stuff. So that's the first thing. You need to make sure the documents say what's allowed in here and what's not. Second thing is, even if they send you a hard copy, that gives them kind of the right to approve or deny. The HOA has to be involved in that to make sure that liability is covered and that we have all the information to find out, well, you have 5 cars, how do you plan to live here? You have 6 people on the lease, how do you plan to rent a 3-bedroom apartment?
So you're saying the management company would handle it?
If it's in your documents, and then it'd be $100 per application paid by the landlord, and we would handle that. And we have an entire process. We use a third party to do it, so we remove some of the liability from us and the workload. But we have stuff in there that they're just going to kick it for. And that's according to your documents. Like we say you can't have 4 cars, because we want to do them a service. What's worse than the renter moving in and from day one they're in non-compliance? And I just signed a lease. I just moved my kids into this school. How am I going to get out of this?
Like no misdemeanors the last 5 years, no felony in the last 10 years?
Whatever's in your
Cut and dry like
documents.
that?
Yeah, whatever's in your
Is that an example
documents.
of cut and dry?
Yeah, so if you guys have some in your documents, it's not up to the board to go, well, he's paid his debt to society, he seems like, that's not the deal. Because Mrs. K, who has to live next to the guy, doesn't want a pedophile living there. So it doesn't matter what the board thinks, the documents are what the board has to use. And the management company will hold the board accountable not to get in that gray area because we'll all get sued together. You know?
So I have a question about that, but Jerome, to your point, we had that issue, which, back and forth, right, recently. But what was crazy about the background check was we went through it, fine-tooth comb. I had a couple of questions, which apparently didn't matter. But to me, they matter. And I mean, I get credit checks don't matter, but to me, it was important to see based on the financials that we have brought up, where, you know, you do see these things where, you know, we don't get paid in the end for people who accrue all this delinquency. And I'm like, well, you know, and I see here they didn't pay their rent for like 2 years.
Yeah,
you know,
their last rent.
Yeah, what was the deal with that? And okay, okay, it wasn't an issue to everybody else. To me, that was
How are they
like
gonna pay the
a
rent now?
huge red flag.
Because that does fall back on the owner who's given the
Right.
okay, because they still have to pay their HOA, they still have to pay the property taxes, and if they have a problem with that tenant, well, they're
An
adults.
issue,
Yeah.
we had one issue where this guy wanted to pay the rent, the entire rent for the whole year.
Red flag, yeah, that's a red flag right there.
Yeah, red flag, way red flag.
And the owner was, I mean, he pushed back on us, like,
Oh.
no, Shamar, it was the garage units. I mean, he
Yeah.
was pissed at us. We said no. I mean, I don't know what loophole it was. Remember that one? Might have been before you were on the board. But I mean, we were all like, something smells bad here. Something smells really
Yeah,
bad.
but to your point, girl, we did a Google search because, I don't know, something just felt
It's
off.
public. Why not?
It's public. I mean, your name, all our names are public, right?
Yeah.
And there was something there. You
It's
know,
a background check.
there was a background check that came out clean, except for the.
Right, because there's different levels of background checks.
That's my point.
There are
That
different
was
levels of
going to be
background
my point. So, and that was what I was going to bring up, right? So there was something off there, and we fought it. I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. It's not a good idea, not a good idea. But they fought back with, okay, this is clean, blah blah blah. I don't know. It was like a big
So
mess.
that
It
comes
was a
back to the
flop.
point that it's got to be cut and dry.
Yes,
Right,
and
and we
so
should do it, because say they don't give them that they live in
That's-
Missouri. All their felonies in Missouri don't show up.
yeah, that was what I was gonna say, right? So like, and what happens if like they're clean, right? So and all of a sudden you Google and it's like they're not clean, you know, or you have like 45 references from like 45 different people saying that they're the and like you said, you know, with second chances, and I'm not saying people don't deserve second chances because yeah, of course, you know, if you've got something going on but you've cleaned yourself up for the past 15 years, why wouldn't you deserve a second chance? I'm not saying that, but if you've got all of these things that don't come back and then you Google it and then they do come back, what do you do then? So should there be, and that's going to my point with the whole document thing, is there, or do you guys have, someone who and I know the 2/3 thing, but is there someone who reviews the documents? B, is there someone that can assist us with possibly fixing the Swiss cheese that we have?
Sure.
And B, is there anything that can help us, not so much with needing a 2/3 vote for some things, but I know that there is a way to, I may be saying the wrong word, it's not an amendment, because an amendment you do need the 2/3 vote, right? But an addendum where you're actually clarifying something.
Right, so what you're talking about is one, yes, the CAN and the senior CAN will review your documents to change what you feel is an issue. So if you said, hey, we have an issue with enforcement of rental issues, then they'll go through there, they'll talk to either your HOA attorney or one we'll recommend, who will say, yeah, this is what I've put in other people's similar townhome communities with similar issues and similar neighborhoods with similar documentation. Here's how I change it, so that the wording gives the board more authority. Any of that changes your documents, quorum, 2/3 member vote, all that stuff. However, say it says something like, and I'm just giving an easy example so we can all stay on task here. Say it says like, may not have an unkept front porch, or something very vague. That vague sentence can now go into your standards and community standards and appearances, right? So then you can specify what exactly an unkept porch is.
Okay.
Having children's toys, having a kayak, having any debris that's not 2 chairs and a table, whatever, the board can actually come up with that and require that even if you're going to change anything, it has to go before board approval, right? ARC, Architectural Review Committee. So no matter what you have in your documents, as long as it mentions something, the board can extrapolate out on that. So if it says lawns must be well maintained, this is what we mean by lawns must be well maintained. Board agrees? Agreed. So 3 board members agree, or 5 board members agree, that these are the community standards that go with that sentence in the vague documents. So that's how you can usually find in your documents something you can enforce. You find the sentence that's vague, and you narrow it down. So again, what's an unkept lawn? Well, if it's not Bahia or St. Augustine, if it's longer than 6 inches, if it shows seating, if it's bare, you can explain all that.
Okay.
Same thing with renters. If it says board has right to refuse renters you know? And it says some vague stuff. You can say, okay, what it is the board will reject you if felonies in the last 7 years. Anything to do with sexual predation or, minors, whatever. Any evictions in the last 3 years. Any outstanding debts that are over X amount.